Welcome to the Group 5 software presentation of Stuxnet, a research presentation as a result of an exploit against our software company. We are here to promote the secure development practices as a result of being compromised by the Stuxnet worm. We're going to describe what is Stuxnet and what did it target, why is it considered a watershed event, what zero-day vulnerabilities did Stuxnet exploit, and what is significant about this, who discovered Stuxnet and how did they find it, how Stuxnet propagated, and how it is believed to have infected its target, Stuxnet's specific functionality against its target and how it kept its operation covert, theories as to Stuxnet's origin, as well as acts of retaliation against its creators.
Stuxnet is a computer worm first discovered in 2010, but it was in development for many years prior. Worms are different from viruses in that they spread on their own and do not require installation by a victim. Initial infections of Stuxnet were seeded to target organizations through infected removable media, but once inside, it spread on its own within the organization from computer to computer through multiple vectors. Stuxnet is very large relative to most malware. It's about 500 kilobytes versus 10 to 15 kilobytes for most other types of malware. It's also unusually sophisticated, using 4 zero-day vulnerabilities, when on average, only 12 zero-day exploits are typically found within a year. Stuxnet was tailored for a very specific mission, instead of casting a wide net like most other cyber attacks. It was designed to compromise supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA, software produced by a particular manufacturer in order to take control of a precise kind of industrial controller. It was the first highly coordinated campaign of cyber warfare by one state against another with the intention of actually doing physical damage to a highly secure and sensitive military and political target.
Stuxnet targeted two specific Siemens model programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, the 315 and 417 family, which were in use at the Natanz uranium enrichment facility in Iran. The ultimate goal was to cause physical damage to the centrifuges used to enrich uranium that were controlled by the Siemens PLCs. Secondary goals included frustrating the Iranian engineers, making them feel stupid because of repeated unidentifiable equipment failures, and delaying the Iranian nuclear weapons program. Tens of thousands of Windows-based computers were infected, but only as a vector for reaching the ultimate target. There was no actual Windows payload. Until Stuxnet, cybersecurity was focused on the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But Stuxnet's target was something completely different. While it may have compromised the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of some systems on the way to its ultimate goal, the true target and end result was not a computer resource at all, but the control and destruction of connected physical equipment, military capability, and political capital. Like with traditional warfare, cyber warfare was used to exert the will of one state over another. It also introduced a new way in which states could attack each other without declaring outright war and sending physical troops. Moreover, it demonstrated that cyber warfare could be used as a force multiplier, taking out critical infrastructure before initiating a physical war.
Zero-day vulnerabilities are flaws in software code that are unknown to the manufacturer or antivirus vendors prior to their use. These items cannot be patched or detected until after the attack is launched. Stuxnet utilized 4 zero-day vulnerabilities. This is significant due to the rarity and value of zero-day vulnerabilities. The first zero-day that Stuxnet utilized allowed it to copy itself and its supporting files to removable media drives whenever one was inserted into the computer. This was extremely important for its objective because its target was air-gapped, which means that it had no internet connection to the outside world. The second zero-day exploit took advantage of the Windows print spooler bug, allowing remote code execution which enabled Stuxnet to spread within a local network. Stuxnet utilized a third zero-day exploit that was able to achieve privilege elevation through faulty Windows kernel mode drivers that incorrectly indexed function pointers. The fourth zero-day exploit used a Windows task scheduler bug to execute code with administrator privileges and thereby take over the system completely.
Stuxnet was discovered in June 2010 by Sergey Olesin and Oleg Kupriv of Virus Blockada, a small Belarusian antivirus firm, with an Iranian client whose machines were BSODing, or having a blue screen of death, and rebooting. A blue screen of death is a fatal system error in Windows known officially as a stop error. Olesin initially suspected a misconfiguration of the affected machines, but after clean installs produced the same errors, he suspected maybe a worm. There was some confusion, however, because the drivers were signed with genuine digital certificates from respected companies. However, the rootkit behavior observed convinced the Virus Blockada team that they were dealing with malware. They published their findings to the security community, and it was then analyzed more in depth by experts throughout the industry. Stuxnet uses manifold propagation methods, including infecting removable media drives, peer-to-peer communications, network share vulnerabilities, print spooler zero-day vulnerabilities, Windows Server message block vulnerabilities, and infecting WinCC machines using a hard-coded database password and malicious SQL code.
Because it was targeted to attack industrial control systems, which are generally not networked, it was vital that Stuxnet be able to cross the air gap between networks. It accomplished this by infecting removable media. Stuxnet used several rules, as shown on the slide, before it would copy itself to a removable drive. It would also delete itself from the drive when certain conditions were met. Stuxnet escaped detection using one of the zero-day exploits discussed earlier. If inserted in a computer that wasn't infected, Stuxnet would automatically try to infect the computer. If necessary, it would execute one of the two zero-day escalation of privilege attacks to ensure that it could install properly. After the exploit was used, the main Stuxnet.dll would run as a new process, either within csrss.exe or as a new task in Task Scheduler. Once it was installed, it would call the process that would inject itself into main system files.
Stuxnet is able to propagate itself over network sharing through two methods, either scheduling a job using user's credentials token or Windows Management Instruction, or WMI, using Explorer.exe token. Stuxnet determines if any network shares are accessible with the user account on the computer or domain or using the Explorer.exe token. When a share is found, Stuxnet creates an exe of itself and copies it to the share with a random file name. A network job is then scheduled to execute the file 2 minutes after infection.
Stuxnet also propagated through a zero-day vulnerability found in the print spooler. This vulnerability was first published in 2009, but it wasn't patched or previously used in the wild, so it is considered a zero-day exploit. Stuxnet used this to propagate by creating a file that contained all information required for the attack. He could copy this file to a real computer using winsta.exe via the print spooler. Once on the remote computer, Stuxnet would execute itself and infect the remote computer.
Stuxnet is able to propagate itself with the Windows Server service vulnerability that was used also for the Down It Up worm, also known as the configure worm. This is an exploit in the server message block protocol that sends a malformed path to allow arbitrary execution. This was already patched, however, many computers are still vulnerable. After successful infection of a system, Stuxnet will try to communicate with a command and control server on port 80. Stuxnet will gather the information about the system it's infected and format it into specific packets, and then encrypt it, and using an injection technique, send it over the browser on the system. The CNC server receives the data and may respond either with another update of Stuxnet to give it the most recent version, and possibly to provide a backdoor for other arbitrary code on that infected computer.
Stuxnet can update itself on computers that aren't directly connected to the internet using peer-to-peer propagation. If a newer version of Stuxnet is available on any machine in the local area network, it can be transmitted to the remaining machines. When infecting a computer, Stuxnet starts an RPC server and monitors for connections from other compromised computers. Once a connection is established, the two computers compare their versions of Stuxnet. If either computer has a newer version, it will provide an update to the other computer by building an executable using a template file included in the main Stuxnet DLL. This executable is then transferred to the other computer via the RPC connection.
Stuxnet can also propagate itself over WinCC databases. If it detects a WinCC database, then it can log in using a hard-coded password in the WinCC software. It then sends malicious SQL code to transfer and execute itself to the computer, thus infecting it. It then further sends a malicious SQL view to execute code each time that view is accessed.
Another method of propagation that Stuxnet utilized was to infect Step 7 project files. WinCC's semantic manager uses S7P and MCP file formats. Stuxnet would search for these files and infect them, provided the following conditions were met. The file was accessed within the last 3.5 years, it contained a WinCproj folder and a valid MCP file, and it was not an example project. The infected project file implemented a DLL preloading attack, which caused the malicious DLL to open with the project. This would infect any machine that opened the infected file. Stuxnet could also use these files to update itself.
If an infected computer has a Siemens PLC connected to it, Stuxnet will fingerprint the PLC to determine if it's a targeted machine. If it is a target, Stuxnet replaces the Semantics DLL file that handles block exchanges between the PLC and the computer and renames the original file. Stuxnet's DLL uses the same routines as the original file, but also monitors PLC blocks as they are written and read, infects the PLC by adding or modifying PLC blocks, and prevents the infection of the PLC from being detected. Stuxnet infects each PLC differently depending on the target system. Three main infection sequences are that A and B are similar and target the 315 family, and C is only applicable to the 417 family. The Stuxnet version of the semantic DLL starts 2 threads to infect the PLC. First, a routine A or B every 15 minutes, and then secondly, one monitors to see if the first one was successful. Stuxnet is able to cover its existence on the PLCs in several ways. It records data when the plant is operating normally, and then plays it back to operators when the attack is underway. This prevents the signals that might have alerted the operators to any issues from being seen. It also only attacks intermittently. The PLC functionality is returned to normal after each attack. This confuses the plant's engineers and allows the attack to continue for an extended period of time. The ultimate goal of the Stuxnet infection was to manipulate the centrifuges at the uranium enrichment facility at Natanz, Iran, and cause them to spin out of control and destroy themselves. Iran did not confirm that any of the centrifuges were destroyed. The Natanz site production dropped 15% in 2009, however, around the same time that Stuxnet is believed to have begun spreading. In November 2010, Iran's president confirmed that several centrifuges were hit by malware. Internal Obama administration estimates say that the effort was set back by 18 months to 2 years, but some experts inside and outside the government are more skeptical, noting that Iran's enrichment levels have steadily recovered, giving the country enough fuel today for 5 or more weapons with additional enrichment.
Opinions on the amount of time required to make Stuxnet vary. Some say that it would have taken a team of 10 working 2 to 3 years, while others say that a team of 5 to 10 could have done it in 6 months, provided they had similar equipment as the target site. Almost all experts agree that the amount of coordination to create Stuxnet would require nation-state involvement. The most prevalent theory is that Stuxnet was a joint effort between the United States and Israeli governments, although no admissions have been made. Within the code of Stuxnet are two items that point to Israeli involvement, but they are not sufficient to be considered proof. According to sources interviewed by author David Sanger, President Obama was intimately involved with the project. In 2012 and 13, a series of cyber attacks occurred against American financial institutions. These attacks were orchestrated by a group called Izz ad-Din al-Qassam cyber fighters. They claimed to be in retaliation for an offensive video that mocked the Prophet Muhammad, but the timing indicates that they may have been a response to Stuxnet. Additionally, in 2011, Iran announced that it had started its own military cyber unit. Brigadier General Jalali stated that the Iranian military was prepared to fight our enemies in cyberspace and internet warfare. In conclusion, Stuxnet represented a major shift in the understanding of what malware could do. It was a targeted worm that was unleashed with political and military goals as opposed to financial. It was able to cause an amount of physical damage with computer code that was previously only seen with kinetic bombs and physical sabotage. It expanded the focus of military to include cyberspace as a possible battlefield. Stuxnet radically changed what the world expected to be possible using malware.